Hey everyone, welcome back to the Maple Leaf channel. You're watching episode 29 of the Science City series. I've got some killer news today and I can't wait to spill it. Big congrats to all you loyal viewers who have been following and rooting for Science Cities, plus a huge shout out to anyone tuning in for the first time. Both crowds have plenty to celebrate, because our republic just hit official millionaire status. Yeah, we've got a whooping 83 million rubles in the bank, and population blasting past 20,000 strong. So what's on the menu today, guys?
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world!
We're diving into the plans for blowing through this cash, where the Republic heads next and exactly why. I've got a couple of ideas, but let's take it step by step. First off, let me show you all the fresh upgrades that popped in Science Cities over the past week. Alright, let's jump into the good stuff. This tourist area was one of the 3 major construction projects this time around. I was really determined to keep the promise I made earlier, and of course I wanted to show you guys what the brand new tourist zone looks like now when it's actually finished. So planning wrapped up and construction kicked off immediately. The buildings closer to the city went up super fast, finished in just 3 winter months. The big reason for that, most of my construction offices were tied up doing repairs, which left almost all heavy machinery and workers completely free for the big build. Come spring that same year, we finally reached the structures on the far side of the entire complex. One combo I absolutely loved was pairing specialized road-only construction offices with my main ones. It massively sped up the ring road and pedestrian zones. The road builders would lay down the base layer super fast, getting progress to around 40% in almost no time. Then I'd switch in the main crews to finish everything off. Yeah, it takes a bit of a micromanagement, but the speed boost was 100% worth it. At the same time, we were raising the residential zone for the future resort workers. That part flew even quicker, and once again I was really grateful for having semi-modern equipment available to me. Materials kept arriving on schedule, and to my surprise the timing of worker transport almost always lined up perfectly with material deliveries. The plan was simple: 5 residential buildings, 145 residents each, plus every necessary service for the whole resort area. Pretty soon you could already see the rough shape of what this place was going to become. All that was left was finishing the power station and the heat plant. But then came a nasty surprise that threw a wrench in everything. The tram tracks running along the waterfront were not connected to power. I must have messed something up with one of the modded buildings. Even though the whole area was already supplied by windmills, at least partially, certain sections of track kept showing the non-electricity icon. In the end, I had to rip out every single piece of tram tracks and replace it with an asphalt road. That decision seriously slowed down overall progress of construction. The silver lining? It gave me tons of extra time to focus on decoration. I went heavily on terraforming and dropped the ground level so that the water now laps right up against an embankment walls. The difference is massive. From the water side, the resort suddenly looks genuinely real. Almost the entire area got meticulously planned with greenery, which added so much realism. Decorations aren't fully finished yet, but honestly it's already postcard worthy. I could start sending invites to tourist agencies in neighboring Republic right now. The landscape was missing one thing: actual tourists. Originally I wasn't planning to open the zone this early, but after staring at how gorgeous it turned out, I changed my mind. Unfortunately, summer was already over and that heat plant was still under construction, so the grand opening got pushed to the next season. The tourists sure didn't waste any time showing up once we flipped the switch. We opened a dedicated tram route running straight from the customs checkpoint to the main stop right in front of those 3 hotels. Clients were pouring in non-stop, and very quickly the whole area came alive with the constant happy chaos of vacationers. According to some very secret intel, the fun didn't stop even at night, but rumor has it the people partying aren't exactly ordinary citizens, just like the ones living in the closed Science City complex. Alright, now let's shift gears and talk about the main sponsor of this episode, Oil City. For anyone new to the channel, this is exact town we settled at the very end of the previous video. These folks lived like a royalty for 2 straight years because they were completely bankrolled by the Science City's budget. And when I say completely, I mean they didn't contribute a single ruble toward balancing the books, they were 100% on the gravy train. But now came their biggest challenge by far, bringing the entire oil refinery industry online. Calling it expensive doesn't even come close. Rough estimate, I think I burned through more than 5 million rubles just in the raw resources. During construction, right after that first winter, I found a potentially serious heating shortage. Factually, the amount of hot water was not good enough, as always. The winter itself passed without blackouts, but come spring, instead of pushing forward on the main facilities, every single excavator operator got reassigned to lay brand new hot water pipes. Meanwhile, the remaining crews were hurriedly slapping together local heat exchangers. In between all that, they were still chewing through the budget at an alarming rate. That put Science cities in a full-on race against the clock. No oil flowing yet, but the money was disappearing fast. Even Grandpa Lenin was standing there looking absolutely baffled, worrying about the chaos as much as the statue possibly could. This project was genuinely massive. By the time we started the liquid loading station, which is the closest building to the town, I only had one 1500-ton storage tank finished, out of the 9 I had planned. On the top of that, the whole site featured 12 pump jacks, hundreds of meters of crude oil pipeline feeding into the storage, 5 giant pump switches, and all the supporting infrastructure you would imagine. Then, a full year later, we finally broke ground on the centerpiece, the refinery itself. To speed things up, I ran one straight dedicated line from the city right to the plant, and suddenly work flew at a much faster pace. The moment construction finished, I dispatched 2 passenger trains, each carrying 130 workers. I left the bus route unchanged, as it turned out to be a fantastic backup source for labor for the heat plant and power station. Not long after, the first train was already rolling to load fuel and bitumen, ready to turn that liquid gold into hard cash. Honestly, I still don't fully understand why fuel and bitumen exports are so insanely popular in this game. In my case, a single train run brings in roughly 350–400,000 rubles. 2 full 9-car trains quickly hauled out 4,500 tons of fuel and another 4,500 tons of bitumen, then spent ages sitting at the loading station because we ran out of crude oil. And this is with 12 pump jacks all sitting above 50% resource quality. So drop your own experience with oil exports in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear what's working for you. Alright, let's keep rolling. We are heading next to the agro-industrial complex. Alright, let's talk about how construction went down in this new zone. It honestly felt like starting the game all over again. I completely scrapped my original idea of transferring heavy equipment from the first city. First reason, that machinery was still busy with local projects just on the side closer to the original town. Second reason, and this is the big one, most of the gear was sitting at about 50–60% wear and tear. Without a single vehicle repair station anywhere near in the new location, sending it over would have been asking for constant breakdowns. Not worth the headache at all. So with 15 temporarily construction offices already in place, it was way faster and smarter to just buy everything brand new. Plus, the customs house is literally around the corner, making logistics of the resources quite easy. I even decided to skip building dedicated resource storages for the exact same reason. Like I mentioned earlier, the builders from the first city had already thrown a couple of farms. That timing was perfect, the planting season was still open, so we managed to get at least part of the field seeded. Grain sits happily in the storage without spoiling, so we can tap it later whenever the growing republic needs it. Oh, and the railway line was almost finished and ready to roll. While the tractors were out there carving endless stripes across what will soon become golden wheat fields, I pulled every piece of equipment out of the temporary construction offices and moved it to this permanent home. At the same time, I started ordering a fresh batch of tower cranes. Man, I love how purchasing works in workers and resources, especially when the budget isn't choking you. This is one of those pure dopamine moments when you realize all the planning and grinding is finally paying off. And there they are, tower cranes in full swing. Fun fact, by the way, in this city I turned on auto search for every single construction office. What was the result? I got to sit back and genuinely enjoy watching almost the entire build process happen with zero input from me. Amazing feeling, I can tell you that. And the crew was crushing it. While I was busy micromanaging 2 other corners of the map, they quietly finished nearly half of the planned buildings. The only thing missing was our own local workforce. I brought them in the first wave about a year later, right when it was time to start fabric, cloth and food factories. The city launched in textbook, normal mode, 0 major screw-ups. I had roughly 600 workers ready to relocate, which turned out to be just enough to keep the basic infrastructure running. There were literally 0 idle workers left for the construction offices. As each building was completed, I began settling them one by one. Very quickly, almost everything I had planned was finished, including most of the railway network. The factories came online soon after, not in the full capacity yet, but more than enough to keep the city supplied with food and clothing. You might ask, what's so special about this place? Let me remind you, friends, this is a production and packaging hub designed to distribute goods across the entire republic. This is where food and clothing are produced, packed into containers and then sent onward to the rail cargo terminal. That's the core idea behind this whole region. The first containers of food and clothing have already started rolling in, and soon after they were loaded onto railway container storages. And let me show you something. On the left side of the screen you can see the total consumption of food and clothing over the past year. Around 6,000 tons of food and just over 200 tons of clothing. In monetary terms, that's a massive expense, and it's only growing to grow. Now take a look at how much of these goods I've already managed to stockpile. Clothing is already in surplus, while food still needs some work. At the moment it's only about 1/5 of the annual demand. Once this region is expanded with alcohol and meat production, the Republic will reach full self-sufficiency with enormous export potential, and most likely these exports will be moved by ship. So if you've been wondering whether this mechanic is worth using, here's a clear example of how it works in the realistic mode. I'm genuinely curious how quickly and how challenging it will be to organize transportation at scale, and if that sounds interesting to you as well, consider subscribing to the channel. I'll break everything down in detail. And with that, we move on to the second part of this video. So folks, all our built cities are either fully pumped up and running smooth, or still growing but already packed with people and ranking in cash. If I just sit back and let it ride, Science cities would chug along in autopilot, stacking up capital into absurdly massive piles. But come on, that sounds boring as heck. Nah, we're pushing forward. Now I've got a big choice. What's next and why? To nail this not just with a solid answer, but by dumping our time and resources into a smart logical expansion, I am basing everything on the resources we actually need most. To understand where all this is heading, let's take a look at domestic production and consumption. We switch the statistic to all time and start with construction materials. Steel is an undisputed leader here, followed closely by gravel, bricks and mechanical components. An interesting detail is that mechanical components, together with electrical components, make up roughly 1/8 of all construction costs, about 6 million rubles in total. What's even more important is that the purchase prices for all three of these resources are rising very quickly. And since we are clearly in modern industry era, they are used in almost every single building. All of this clearly points to one conclusion: it's time to establish local production of these components inside the Republic. If we look at the map of the Republic, there are only 2 iron ore deposits available. One is located very close to us, while the other lies on the opposite side of the map. But steel production also requires coal, and it turns out that the closest coal deposit to iron is located in the northwest. Unfortunately, that coal deposit is extremely poor, and transporting iron across the entire map at this stage would take far too long. Meanwhile, the iron deposit near the agro-industrial region has much higher extraction potential, but it's located far away from any coal source. After weighing all the pros and cons, I decided to develop the nearest iron deposit. Coal is already available relatively close by, can be easily delivered by train or simply purchased at the nearest customs house. This allows me to start producing and stockpiling steel in a strategically important location, right next to the main railway line, and when I need large volumes of steel, I will be able to move it by train directly to the next major construction site. Next, we move on to production of electrical and mechanical components. Electrical components require steel, chemicals and plastic, while mechanical components need only steel. And this is where everything fits together surprisingly well. First, we have an oil field located right next to the aluminium production. From there, oil can be transported whenever we need it, primarily to the plastic factory. Chemicals will come from a nearby chemical plant, completing the production chain required for electrical components. Second, steel production is already established in the same region, which is essentially everything we need for mechanical components. This creates another profitable resource and gives us an ability to stockpile it for the future use. And finally, the cherry on the top, the electrical factory. It requires resources that are also available right next door: electrical components, mechanical components and plastics. To support all of this industry, we will need a brand new city with a population of around 6,000 to 7,000 people. And this wide, flat terrain is absolutely perfect for building a modern socialist metropolis. Now the most important question: what are we going to spend all these millions on? Helicopters, my friends. Yes, helicopters. As I promised a few episodes ago, the next major city will be built using heli construction offices. And that's exactly what we will be planning in the third and final part of this video. Last week, both my son and I celebrated our birthdays, which naturally limited time I could dedicate to producing a new episode. Because of that, today's episode serves as a preparation phase for what's coming next. Over the next 2 or 3 episodes, we will fully dive into the detailed planning and of course large-scale construction of everything you've heard about today. Let's move on to the final part. The location for this future construction giant, and I'm not exaggerating here, was chosen very deliberately. To place resource storage buildings, cargo platforms and helicopter parking areas, you need a lot of space. And the efficiency of a heli construction office depends heavily on the distance between the helicopter parking area and the resource storage. The shorter that distance, the faster a helicopter can deliver materials to the construction site. That's why all buildings here need to be placed compactly and as close to each other as possible. If we imagine the area on the screen as a rectangle, its horizontal length is about 900 in-game meters, while the vertical width is a full kilometer. That's more than enough space for warehouses holding every construction resource, as well as parking for 30 helicopters. I only slightly terraformed this area, mainly to connect all buildings with roads. This is necessary both for fire service access and for delivering certain materials not only by train, but also by trucks. Due to the layout and road connections, the entire complex will also need perimeter bypass roads. We start with the rail cargo station and choose the longest station available in the base game. I won't be using building mode here, simply because it's one of the challenges conditions. There are excellent mods in the Steam workshop, and if I ever start a new season of Workers and Resources, I will definitely prepare a custom mod pack in advance. But for now, let's get back to our rail cargo station. The station will be connected to 4 small storages with claws. If you have experience with the game, you already know why exactly 4. If not, here's a quick explanation. Every building in the game is constructed from 4 primary resources: brick, steel, panels and boards. In addition, there are 5 secondary resources: gravel, asphalt, concrete, mechanical components and electrical components. Each building requires its own combination and quantity of these resources. That's why each storage building here is dedicated to a single resource. All storages must have factory connections to the rail cargo station. I also positioned them so that 2 storages on the side of the platform are spaced as far as possible. This spacing leaves room for large heli cargo platforms, and you might ask, why do we need them at all? If, like me, you skip the tutorial, it's easy to get confused between heli cargo platforms and heliports. Both load resources onto helicopters, similar to cargo or train loading stations. However, heli cargo platforms have factory connections, which means they can connect directly to storage buildings. Heliports, on the other hand, are used for materials that cannot be stored, such as asphalt and concrete. They also function as permanent helicopter parking when they are attached to the heli construction offices. Each heli cargo platform must be factory connected to its storage. Each platform has 3 landing zones, allowing 3 helicopters to load or unload simultaneously. Modern buildings require hundreds or even thousands of resources, so I decided to place 2 platforms per storage. This effectively doubles delivery speed, since the resources are delivered gradually based on construction stages rather than all at once. Next, we move on to 2 additional stored resources: electrical and mechanical components. These are used in smaller quantities during construction, and in theory, 1 large warehouse would be enough. But since this construction hub will be used across the entire Republic, I placed 2 warehouses. Even if one ends up unnecessary, it can later be converted into a transit storage for any resource needed in the region, for example chemicals for future plastic production. Both warehouses receive nearby heli cargo platforms, 1 platform each, with 3 landing zones. This setup now covers 6 of the 9 construction resources. All of them will be delivered here by train through the nearest rail distribution office from the agro-industrial region. In total, we now have 30 helicopter loading platforms, which should greatly help with logistics, especially since at this stage I only have access to early helicopters with very limited payload capacity. Now we deal with bulk and, let's say, liquid construction materials. I considered 2 options. The first was placing gravel, asphalt and concrete plants somewhere near Farm City, but that would break the agricultural vibe of the region. The second option was to place all 3 productions, including gravel extraction, directly at the construction's base. After studying the map, I found a small area where bedrock slightly reaches the surface. After some successful terraforming, I managed to place 2 modern gravel quarries. Together, their deposit quality is around 90%, which should be more than enough. Modern quarries have 2 major advantages. First, they can house up to 3 excavators each, reaching full productivity. Second, they support conveyor connections, allowing quarried stone to be transferred directly to the gravel processing plant without dump tracks. Once both quarries were placed, all that remained was installing conveyor towers to collect resources from both quarries simultaneously, while still preserving pedestrian access for construction office, of course. Then we add another tower and a modern gravel processing plant. I also added a conveyor overpass to preserve a through-road connection for the future use. The processed gravel flows directly into a 1,000-ton storage. From experience, my 2,500-ton gravel storage in the first city rarely drops below 2,000. So I took a risk here and went with the smallest storage available. To the right of the gravel storage, I placed a concrete plant. The main reason is cement. I'll be delivering it here by trucks. It's not especially fast, but again, based on experience, one concrete plant with a 1,000-ton cement storage can support continuous construction within 100 meters for entire year. And here the distances will be dozens or even hundreds of times greater, allowing more time for cement deliveries. And this is important, guys. Concrete cannot be stored, so helicopters can only transport it using a heliport. The building must overlap the plant and be highlighted in green to confirm the connection, like you see on the screen now. The gravel storage, which supplies massive quantities, is connected to 2 heli-cargo platforms via bulk resource connections, the third connection type. As you can tell, it's very similar to regular construction offices material deliveries, but I get that it's easy to get lost in the details in the first time. Always double-check connections. Rebuilding in realistic mode means demolishing first and rebuilding from scratch. Here I also made sure that the pedestrian path fits underneath the conveyor. To the left of the storage, I placed an asphalt plant and a heliport for 3 helicopters. Like the concrete setup, it must overlap correctly. At this point, roughly half of all buildings are complete. Since we are still in the zone with worker-dependent industries, it's time to handle workforce logistics. Nothing complicated here. A simple bus stop for 200 passengers combined with elevated and underground pedestrian paths. After checking that all buildings are within walking distance, we move on. The main road must now be connected to Farm City. I built a bridge because placing a railway crossing near a customs checkpoint is a terrible idea. Traffic here will be heavy, with 5 or 6 buses constantly running back and forth to keep production running smoothly. It makes full sense to have a bridge here. If you thought this territory was excessive, here is why it's not. Placing a heli construction office itself is simple. 1 office and 1 heliport. But I need 30 helicopters. That means 6 offices and 6 heliports. And they all need to be connected with a logical road layout. Otherwise, fire trucks will get lost, and if a heli construction office or heliport burns down, you are looking at losses of 4 to 10 million rubles per incident. To supply helicopters with fuel and the asphalt plant with bitumen, we need a train unloading station. At this point, I realized it was time to start connecting roads before all buildings were placed. I will insert a short time-lapse here. Commenting on road grids isn't very interesting, but skipping straight to the final result wouldn't be fair either. Once all roads are in place, the remaining tasks are fuel and bitumen storage. I allocated 2 fuel storages of 1500 tons each and 1 bitumen storage of the same size. I'll be honest, I haven't used helicopters in a while, so I don't remember how quickly they burn fuel, but something tells me 2 fuel storages for 30 helicopters won't be excessive. The asphalt plant is an active building and it has its own pump, so it will pull bitumen directly from storage as needed. For the heli construction offices, I placed the pump right after the train unloading station to act as a splitter. It distributes fuel to both fuel storages. Each storage is then connected to its own external pump, which sends fuel directly to the construction offices. Since we have 6 offices, we need 2 pumps with 3 outputs each. The final structural element of this zone is the railway layout connecting storages to the Republic's main railway line. This entire area will be transit-based. Trains enter from one side and exit from the other. From experience, this approach is far more efficient than dead-end stations. It reduces traffic congestion and simplifies signal management. Yes, it costs more and takes more space, but the maps in this game are enormous, so saving space here simply makes no sense. We are approaching the end of this massive planning phase. Now we add technical services. A large fire station is mandatory. Without proper fire protection, everything here could burn down within a year. Helicopters alone represent around 60 million rubles in investment, not counting construction and stored resources. Just a few fires could seriously damage the economy. We also place a water treatment plant, because anywhere people work, drinking water is required. The concrete plant, in addition, requires a dedicated pipeline as well. Water will be supplied by a small well. This isn't a residential area, so if water ever becomes insufficient, I can simply add another small well. Next comes electricity. Power will be imported from a conveniently located small customs office. 6 electrical substations, I think, should be more than enough for the entire complex. And speaking of reserves, even with 85 million rubles in the account, I still don't feel like I've beaten the game. Very huge respect to the developers for creating an economy where even late game there is always a way to spend money and push the budget to its limits. Bravo! The final building in this complex is the vehicle repair station. Without it, vehicles will constantly break down, especially helicopters. It doesn't cover every heli construction office, but by tightening the repair radius to this zone, all helicopters should receive timely maintenance. Friends, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode and managed to discover or rediscover something new for yourself. Science Cities was never meant to be a strict guide, but I do my best to make each episode not only entertaining but also genuinely informative. The idea is quite simple. You can open any episode, see the production type right there in the thumbnail and easily refresh your memory, maybe with a cup of tea, before diving back to building your own republic. If you like this episode, please leave a comment, drop a like or even subscribe to the channel, it really helps a lot. That's all for today, folks. In the next episode we'll be planning several new projects, most likely steel production and entirely new city. And of course I'll share my hands-on experience of using this massive construction giant in real conditions. See you next week, take care for now.